Hi class, good morning. This is Teacher Vin, and I will be your new student intern. Today we'll be discussing a new topic titled Strategies for Interpersonal Communication. So before going to our lesson proper, let us first discuss our objectives for today, or the questions that we should be able to answer by the end of the discussion. So first is we have what is communication? Second is what is interpersonal communication? Third, why is interpersonal communication important? And lastly, how do we effectively communicate with others? So, first, what is communication? Communication, according to dictionary meaning, is imparting or exchanging of information or news. So, a message or sharing of experiences with a friend that would already be considered communication. It's a two-way process between the sender and the receiver of the message. So for us to visualize that, here's a visual aid. So we have the sender on the left side and the receiver on the right side. And as you can see, the sender is sending the receiver a message. So once they receive the message, they internalize the message, they process it in their mind, after which they can send a feedback directly in response to the message initially sent to them. So send the nila og feedback by this area here. When they already send the feedback, they will no longer be called the receiver, but they are now called the sender. And it's a vice versa process, man. And now the sender, since they are the ones receiving the feedback, they are now gonna be called the receiver. So it's a vice versa process, an alternating process as well. Next is what is interpersonal communication? So from the word interpersonal, it is the process of exchange of information, ideas, or feelings between two or more people through verbal or non-verbal methods. So just like I said earlier, interpersonal is wherein you communicate with other people, share experiences, share messages, and then they respond back. That would already be considered communication. Okay. Now, why is interpersonal communication important? Why are we even discussing it in the first place? The reason why is because of the passage that says, "No man is an island." And I agree sa kaninga passage. Why? It's because people are expected to communicate their thoughts, feelings, and needs with other people. Why? Diba, during when we were infant, or when we were just born, how do we communicate with the people that surrounds us? It's through crying or through laughing, right? So if we feel uncomfortable, we cry. If we feel hungry, we cry. So if we feel comfortable, we're relaxed and we're not making any noises. And then if we find something very humorous, we laugh. We laugh unconsciously. So that is something that we do in our and that is that what we do when we were just infants. And because of that, we were able to survive. And now we are individuals who can share or express their own ideas through words or sentences or paragraphs. Okay. Next is we have interpersonal communication. It is expressed through verbal or non-verbal methods. And through this, it will allow us to engage and socialize with other people. Again, highlight the word interpersonal, which is interacting with other people apart from yourself. Next, what are the different media of communication? So here's a visual aid. The separation or the different branches of communication media. So communication media is divided into two. We have the verbal and the non-verbal. Under verbal, we have oral communication and written communication. For oral, we have either speaking or listening, and written we have either writing or reading. For non-verbal, here are some examples but are not limited to, okay? So we have facial expressions, gestures, body language, proximity, touch, personal appearance, and silence. So, but we need to go deeper of as to what verbal, non-verbal medias of communications are. So first, let's discuss verbal. So verbal communication is the expression or exchange of information or messages through written or oral words. A majority of the people think that when you say verbal, it's the it's their interpretation of verbal is kanang pagstorya good or inigstorya, or the moment you expel sound from your mouth, that would already be considered verbal. But they are actually wrong, because when you say man good verbal, it can either be oral or written words. So oral is the katong kuan, katong ginastorya yun nato, or when we expel sounds from our mouth. So when you say oral, oral is the process of communication in which messages or information is exchanged or communicated within sender and receiver through word of mouth. And the examples of these are speaking and listening, or the communication methods are through speaking and listening. Anong listening man sir nga? Ingon ka, if it expels sounds from our mouth. Listening do not do that. Why is it included in the oral part? It's because oral communication is requires both speaking and listening skills. Why? Because when you're able to speak, you also need to be able to listen. Because if you're not able to listen, speaking would not be as effective. And listen, if you're able to speak but you're unable to listen, then speaking would not be as effective as well. Okay. Now, let's go to the written communication. So it says here, written communication is the process of communication in which messages or information is exchanged or communicated within sender and receiver through a written form, like writing and reading. So similar yapon na, writing and reading are partners. So without both of them, one might not be as effective as compared to when they have both. Okay. So written, when you say written, these are through so what? So kung isuwat mo siya through a paper, through a book or whatnot, that would already be classified as a written form of communication. So moving on, we'll now go to non-verbal communication. So non-verbal communication is the expression or exchange of information messages without using any spoken or written word. So kunan ni siya. Again, there are a lot of examples, okay? So what you simply need to remember when it comes to nonverbal is that anything, di ba? Anything that is not expressed through written or oral words, that would already be considered non-verbal method of communication. Okay? So some examples, again, not limited to, are facial expressions, gestures, body language, proximity, touch, appearance, silence, eye gaze, and eye contact. Okay, good. Now we can now ask if how can we effectively communicate with others, since we already discussed naman the meaning of communication, interpersonal communication, what are the different medias of communication. So now Mona Nisha, how can we effectively communicate with others? So we can effectively communicate with others by knowing the different communication barriers and following different communication strategies. Why is it important for us to know this? Because when you understand the barriers stopping us from communicating effectively, then we can follow the strategies that can help us go through those barriers, or that can go around those barriers, kay para wala na mag-stop sa ato to communicate effectively with other people. So there are actually three barriers and three strategies as well. So the first one is the barriers and strategies to and for effective listening. So first, let's discuss the barriers to effective listening. Ingon siya, focusing on a personal agenda. So when we spend our listening time formulating our next response, we cannot be fully attentive to what the speaker is saying. So kanya, I'm sometimes guilty of this, because when I talk to someone, what I usually after gathering a few information from that person, what I do is I already formulate a response to that formulate a response to that um, initial information that I was given to. Sometimes incomplete ako ang information magather, so my response would sometimes not be that accurate. And again, that's a sign of ineffective communication, because when you are interacting with someone, you need to have your full attention on that person and not formulating a response immediately. So let that person finish, and then after finishing dito na ka mag-formulate sa imong response and answer that person if it is a question. Okay, next is experiencing information overload. So, too much stimulation or information can make it very difficult to listen with full attention. Try to focus on the relevant information and central points that are being conveyed. So, what you can do, this is what I do is especially in seminars or lectures wherein it's very very long. So what I do is I only focused on the main ideas or the major points. So for example, in this slide alone, di ba daghan makaayo siya og mga words and sentences. So what I do is I focus on the main point, which is for example the barrier. So focusing on a focusing on a personal agenda. So instead of writing the entire sentence under focusing on a personal agenda, I would just write my own understanding and shorten it as much as possible. That would still have a complete thought. That would still have a complete thought. Yeah, pero na concise na siya or na shorten na siya. So that's how I would do it para dili ko ma-overwhelm sa information. So I wouldn't be overwhelmed with the information, and because of that, I won't have information overload. Okay, next is criticizing the speaker. So do not be distracted by the critical evaluations of the speaker, focused on what they are saying. The message rather than the messenger. So we sometimes criticize the speaker based on how they look, their mannerisms, or unsa ilahang gipang sulo. We judge them, medyo judger ra kaayo ta, or judgmental. But please remove those things from your mind because of that we won't be able to focus on what the speaker or the messenger is saying. So just a sample ha. If a mannerism of the speaker is saying a lot majority of us, if not all, kay counting the number of that the speaker has already used. And then mga tawa dayon sa luyo ingon ana. Tagaingon og mga tawa na sad o ingon ana. But again, that is a sign of you not effectively communicating with someone. Okay. Next is getting distracted by emotional noise. So we react emotionally to certain words, concepts, and ideas, and to myriad of other cues from speakers like appearance, nonverbal cues such as gestures, etc. Make a conscious effort to quiet your own emotional reaction so that you can listen properly. So connected din siya sa criticizing the speaker and getting distracted by emotional noises. Next is getting distracted by external noise. So mao ni siya ang mga noises coming from the outside source, coming from the environment or the people around you. So audible noise may be extremely distracting. Some things can be minimized, like turning down the ringer on your phone, the notification on your phone or computer while meeting with someone. Other noises may be unavoidable, like construction noises, other people. Also, there may be figurative noise from external environments such as distracting or inappropriate decor in a room, or environmental conditions such as the room being too hot or cold. So, mauni siya ang mga distractions again from outside sources like the environment you are in right now. Okay, next is experiencing physical difficulty. Sometimes these are also unavoidable because you are physically feeling unwell or experiencing pain that can make it very difficult to listen effectively. You may wish to communicate that this is not a good time and reschedule the discussion. So if you are not feeling well, sometimes sometimes it's not okay for you to push through with the meeting. Okay, you would not be able to internalize the information as well, since again you're not feeling well. You're not at 100 at your 100% in terms of your listening. So okay, it's better for you to reschedule it at the time wherein you're already feeling well, kay para ma-internalize gid nimo ang tanan information. Okay, so those are again the barriers to effective listening. So now we can discuss the strategies for effective listening. And again, we can use these strategies to combat the barriers to effective listening. Now, the first one is to here stop, look, and listen. So stop, focus on the other person, their thoughts and feelings. So basically, what they're trying to say is once you are talking to someone and you want to pay attention to that person, stop what you are doing. So if you are doing a task right now and then you want to talk to this person, do not multitask and do that task and at the same time talk to that person. Okay, you would only pick up a few information, or sometimes you might misunderstand that person or the message he is trying to deliver. Next is look. pay attention to the nonverbal messages without letting yourself be distracted. Notice body language and nonverbal cues to allow for a richer understanding of the speaker's point. Remember that active listeners need to communicate to the speaker that they are involved and giving the person unconditional attention. So, 'di ba? Og nabiatay ka ng mga makasturya nga kanang expressive kayo in terms of their gestures, and their gestures makes a lot of impact in terms of emphasizing things. So, we need to look at these nonverbal cues or nonverbal gestures that can help us focus on the main points or the major points. Okay, now listen. Listen for the essence of the speaker's thoughts, details, major ideas, and their meanings. Again, seek on overall understanding of what the speaker is trying to communicate rather than reacting to the individual words or terms that they use to express themselves. So it's not enough na imuha lang na interpret ang word per word na ginaingon ni speaker. What you can do is listen to the entire paragraph, listen to the entire seminar, or not the entire seminar entirely, but for example, listen to that passage that the person just said, and then after listening to that entire passage, that's the time you can interpret that. Okay, sometimes magod the meaning might change if you interpret it based on word per word basis. So listen to the entire thing first and then make your own interpretation out of it. Okay, next is we have be empathetic, and I think this is a normal thing that everyone should have. Be empathetic. Imagine yourself on that person's shoes. So for example, if you're expressing a personal detail that is kanang para nimo it's important, and then you see that person not paying attention or not or showing this interest to what you're saying, of course you would be offended, and it would discourage you to continue sharing, right? So be empathetic, put yourself in that person's shoes. What would you feel? So if that won't make you feel good, then don't do it. Okay. Next, asking questions. Use questions to clarify your understanding as well as to demonstrate interest in what is being said. So when you ask question man good, it confirms that you are listening. It also confirms that lanaminaw na siya, and that person is just making sure the information he or she got is accurate or not. Okay. Next is paraphrasing, which I'm very used to using. Why is because ingon siya, if you don't have any specific questions to ask, you may choose to repeat back to the speaker in your own words what you have taken away in order to allow the speaker to clarify any points. Now this is what I usually do, because during seminars or lectures, what I do is always take down notes, and as I've said, dili na ko siya gina-copy ang entire paragraphs because sometimes it's really long, and it would take a huge chunk of my time writing it down. Okay, so what I do is I just make sure I concisely write down my own interpretation on that specific topic, and then after the discussion, I clarify it with the speaker if the information I got is accurate or on point. Okay. Next, since we've already discussed the barriers and the strategies of actively listening or effectively listening, we can now start with the barriers to accurate perception. So, what is accurate perception? When you say perception, Manggod, it is your understanding of what was delivered or what message was delivered to you. Okay, so sometimes maglisod ta, and it's because of maglisod ta og sabot sa iyang gipang ingon, and it is because of these barriers. So the first one is stereotyping and generalizing. So be careful not to hold on to perceptions about people or things. We often have a tendency to see what we want to see, forming an impression from a small amount of information or one experience, and assuming that to be highly representative of the whole person or situation. So, stereotyping and generalizing. So, pag-abot pa lang, pagkahibalo pa lang nimo sa tawag ani, sa topic of the lecture, nanadayon kay stereotype or nanadayon kay idea of what the topic will be. Yeah, you are already closing your mind to that idea alone nga, and then ay kaon man na sila kabalo na ko kung unsa na sila tanan blah 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 blah. So if you're closing your mind to the lecture, you won't be able to intake the ideas from those people who are speaking in front. And you would still, at the end of the discussion or at the end of the lecture, you would still be closed minded and you have not learned anything. Now, next is we have not investing time. So making assumptions and ignoring details of circumstances or circumstances can lead to misconceptions. We When we fail to look in depth for causes or circumstances, we miss important details and do not allow the complexity of the situation. So, ang tendency man good is that we sometimes rush on things, making conclusions right away, which sometimes is good, but not all the time. Because especially if you were just given a chunk of information or a huge or daghan kayo and sometimes overwhelming information, so you do not make a rush conclusion right away. You need to invest time on learning that specific topic or learning that certain topic or thing okay para you can make accurate conclusions and you can make correct decisions. Okay, next is having a distorted focus. So almost similar na siya sa stereotyping and generalizing. Focusing on the negative aspects for a conversation or a situation is a habit common to many people. Even though we may recognize the positive things, when we often give more weight to the negative, allowing one negative comment to overshadow the numerous positive ones. So, moto siya, when you are already stereotyping or generalizing even prior to the discussion, by the end of the lecture, you still have the same mindset and kanang you were not open man to new ideas, so you were just focused on your own. And again, that's a sign of a bad. That's a sign that you're not accurately perceiving the information that was given to you. And again, one sign of ineffectively communicating. Okay, next is we have assuming similar interpretations. So, not everyone will draw the same conclusions from a given situation or set of information. Everybody interprets things differently. Make sure to check for other people's interpretations and be explicit about your own. So now this is also something that I do. So I share with other people like for example, uy ako ang take ani ba is blah 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 blah. Do we have the same take on this? Wala din sila. Then they express their own take on that topic. So if nag coincide ang amo ang interpretation on that specific topic, then okay. That means I'm my perception on that topic is correct. But for example, gani if our interpretation do not meet or has information that are not meeting, then what I do is I ask them, okay, nganong ingon na imong interpretation. So I listen to their explanation. I also express to them why my interpretation is like this, and then I just make sure I have an open mind. I have an open. Yeah, I just make sure I just make sure that I have an open mind kay para I can internalize their own explanation of their interpretation. So if para nako their explanation makes sense, then I would be open and free to adjust my interpretation since it makes sense, man. Okay. And next is we have the experiencing in incongruent cues. As speakers and as listeners, we are constantly and simultaneously sending cues and receiving them from other people. So, medyo taas-taas siya, no? So, let me just summarize that area or that paragraph. So, basically, what we're doing here is kana makareceive ka o kanang inconsistent na non-verbal cues from the speaker or not really just non-verbal. So for example, iyang verbal is positive tapos iyang non-verbal cue is negative. So it does not meet, right? So incongruent cues ang tawag ana. So let me just give you an example. So let's say for example the person you were talking to said nga kanang I hope you get 100 on your exam. And then after niya pag-ingon ana nag knock on wood siya. Sumasya. I hope you get 100% on your exam today. So, 'di ba when you do knock on wood, it's a symbol of which that person does not want that thing to happen. So, knock on wood, simba ko lang, 'di ba ingon ana. So, the messenger or the sender of the message is giving you inconsistent or double messages. So are you saying I should are you hoping na I will not get 100%, or you're hoping na I would get 100% on someone yun? So sometimes the person is unaware nga that symbol de ay is kanang pertaining to what you understood. So that's why you need to clarify it with someone. So unsa man, are you saying that I should not get 100% on my exam, or you're hoping that I would get 100% on my exam? So mashallah, ngano di ay ana. So dito na din nga ang kana manggod nga signal kana manggod nga symbol is saying nga kanang simba ko. And when you say simba ko, you're hoping na dili na mahitabo. Ano din. So you can educate that person as well. Next is since we're done with the barriers to accurate perception, we can now proceed to the strategies for accurate perception. So the first one is to analyze your own perceptions, question your perception, and think about how they are formed. So similar siya sa kung giingon ganina. So the way you question your own perception is to for me, I write it down and making sure if my ideas for me is akong ginasuwat is confirms my ideas about a certain topic. So after writing it down, I approach someone and check with them if we have the same interpretation of the topic. If we have the same interpretation, good. Then that means we're on the same page. If we have different or inconsistent interpretation of the topic, then we discuss the inconsistencies. Next is work on improving your perception. So increase your awareness of barriers to perception and which ones tend towards. Check in with yourself regularly, seek honest, constructive feedback and other regarding from others regarding their perceptions of you as means of increasing your self-awareness. So if we are self-aware, or if we are aware of the things that we can improve on, then the more we would be more effective in terms of accurately perceiving the information. Let's say we have a tendency to kato overwhelm ourselves with information, like diba, when we use highlighters we only highlight the main points and the major points, so we have the tendency to highlight the entire paragraph, which sometimes is really ano sa tawagan ni dili siya effective, so sometimes it's ineffective. And you need someone, for example, you in your own opinion that is okay, but majority of your class thinks that that's not okay, so you need to ask for constructive feedback or constructive criticism from other people, that so that they can point out the things that you should be aware of. Okay, next is we have the focus on others. So develop your ability to focus on other people and understand them better by trying to gather knowledge about them, listening to them actively, and imagining how you would feel in their situation. As I've said, focus your attention on the speaker and empathize on the speaker. Next is we have the barriers to effective verbal and non-verbal communication. Says here lacking clarity. So avoid abstract, overly formal language, colloquialism, and jargon, which obscure your message more than they serve to impress people. So I'm not sure, but I know a lot of people who use really big, unfamiliar words in their paragraphs or in their sentences or the way they talk. And sometimes dili gud siya masabtan dayon sa mga tao. So instead of makasabot na noon sila, dili na noon sila makasabot sa message that that person is trying to deliver. So instead of using these big unfamiliar words, how about using words that are familiar to everyone and that everyone can understand, to prevent any miscommunications or any misinterpretations of what you were trying to say. Next is we have jumping to conclusion, and I think this is very self-explainable. It's not okay, or it's a sign of ineffective communication if you automatically jump to conclusion. Make sure that you let the person finish first before jumping to any conclusion. You've gathered all of the information you need, so after gathering all of those information, that's the time you make your conclusion. Next is we have the dysfunctional responses. Ignoring or not responding to a comment or questions quickly undermines effective communication. So ang kaning dysfunctional responses lang, all you need to remember is if kuan gani if there is a question that relates to the topic that you are currently discussing, answer those questions. Do not leave those questions unattended or unanswered rather. But if the questions are unrelated to the topic you are currently discussing, then do not answer those questions, and instead of ignoring those, revert them back to the topic you were discussing. Okay. And next and last is we have lacking confidence. So lacking confidence can be a major barrier to effective communications. Shyness, difficulty of being assertive, or low self-worth can hinder your ability to make your needs and opinions known. So I think a lot of people has this problem, but including myself. And what I do to overcome confidence is to really know the subject matter, if meaning know the topic that you are discussing or that you will be talking about. Practice, practice, and practice. I cannot say that enough. All you need to do is practice. So once you've mastered it, then that's the time that. And once you've mastered your craft, then you will feel comfortable expressing your own ideas, expressing your own thoughts about that certain topic. And it would automatically reduce your shyness or your nervousness in front when you are discussing. Now, last is we have the strategies for effective verbal and non-verbal communication. So first is focused on the issue and not on the person. As I've mentioned before, focused on what the person is trying to say and not on their image, appearance, their mannerism, or unsa pa na sila. Don't focus on those, focused on the message that the person is trying to say. Okay, be genuine rather than manipulative. I've encountered a lot of these people wherein they ask questions not because they are confused of the discussion you just did. They ask questions for them to test your knowledge on that specific topic. So ingon ana sila, that's being manipulative ha. So again, when you ask questions, it is because you are unsure or confused of the information and not because you want to test that person's knowledge. Next is we have empathize rather than remain detached. As I've said, it's important for us to empathize to the speaker, the speaker or the sender of the message. Next is we have be flexible towards others. Same with what I said earlier ni anak ko nga kanang if the opinions of others if their interpretation of a certain topic makes sense, and if that changes my own interpretation of that certain topic, I would be flexible and do it. I would not be stubborn and mo na kong ipamugos na ko akong interpretation when the interpretation of the other person makes sense, right? Be flexible. Next is to value yourself and your own experiences. Be firm about your own rights and needs. Undervaluing yourself encourages other people to undervalue you too. Offer your ideas and expect to be treated well. So those are your own experiences. So do not let other people undermine your own experiences, okay? So share all you want, what you experienced, and then again, be make sure nga your experiences be treated equally as the experiences of other people. And lastly, it is to use affirming responses. So respond to other in ways that acknowledge their experiences. Thank them for their input. I affirm their rights to their feelings, even if you disagree. Ask questions, express positive feeling, and provide positive feedback when you can. So, mo to siya. So, for example, if the experiences that they've shared kanang do not relate to your experiences to that specific scenario, then all you need to do is really just thank them for sharing, and thank them kanang that you were given separate and unrelated a separate and somehow unrelated experience to yours. So it's a different and new knowledge pale. Okay, and that concludes our discussion for today. So we'll just do a quick recap of what we did in this video lecture. First is we discussed what is communication. We also answered what is interpersonal communication and the different media of communication or the different media communication. Third is we also discuss why is interpersonal communication important. And lastly, we discuss how do we effectively communicate with others by discussing the barriers that we need to avoid and the strategies that we need to follow in order to effectively communicate with others. And again, that concludes our discussion for today. Thank you, class, for listening in today's discussion. What I want you to do right now is you need to go to your Google Classroom, take the week 2 exit ticket, and wait for the week 2 exercise password to be sent via email. If you have any questions or concerns, kindly please message me through my Facebook or Messenger account. My name is Vin Sumalinog, and directly send me a message. I would be notified if you will be sending one. Yep, and that's it. Thank you so much for attending the class today. You guys have a wonderful day. God bless everyone. Bye bye.